and welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have a recipe that is inspired from Chef Caleb's Texas roots. This is a sweet potato casserole, but it's a little different from ones you may have had before. It's a little lighter on the sugar, as in there's none added, and it's still delicious. I promise this will be your new favorite sweet potato casserole recipe. So we're going to start with our sweet potato, some pecans. There's going to be plenty of butter in here, a little bit of garlic, and also a little bit of cinnamon. We are going to add some rum raisins a little bit later on in the recipe as well. So we're just going to start with some of the butter. We're going to coat the inside of our casserole dish and make sure it's got a good coating of the butter on the inside. This is basically just to help everything to keep from sticking. We don't want everything to stick to your casserole dish, so we're just going to grease it a little bit with some butter. And then we're going to give it a little dash of cinnamon as well. So not too much. You do want to get some good coverage on there. Unlike breadcrumbs, unfortunately, the cinnamon's not going to really flow very well. So when it hits the butter on the casserole dish, it's basically going to stay where it lands. But you do want to make sure you have some pretty good coverage. You don't want to use a whole lot. A little bit goes a long way. So a very light dusting is fine. This is plenty. If you really love cinnamon, you're welcome to add a little bit more if you like. And then we are going to add our garlic. Now, we found that the combination of the cinnamon and the garlic and those rum raisins gave this a really interesting kind of Moroccan feel to it. It was really delicious, all cooked. Now, the nice thing about what we're doing here is this is going to be a roasted dish. And this garlic is going to go underneath all the sweet potatoes, just in the bottom of the casserole dish. And it's going to roast along with everything else and get really nice and sweet while imparting some of that garlic flavor through the whole dish. So we're going to add that at the bottom here, just in the edges of the dish, and then we're going to start preparing our sweet potatoes. So first thing, of course, you want to do is peel it. So we're just going to get everything nicely peeled here. It is pretty fibrous, so it tends to stick a little bit in your peeler. And there we go. So once everything is peeled, you're probably going to want to take that little root end off, or the little stubby end off. If there's any sort of damaged area or dry area at one end, you are going to want to take that off as well. And then you want to cut it. We want some nice, pretty thick slices on this. We don't want it to be sliced super thin. We want a little bit of bite to it. So we are going to cut it into pretty thick slices. And we're going to tile this into our casserole dish once all is said and done. So some good sort of meaty chunks in there. And then we're just going to layer that into our casserole dish. So the small ones can go underneath. You do want to leave a little bit of space beneath everything. You don't want it to be crammed really tightly together. You want to make sure that there's some voids underneath the sweet potatoes. That really does help it sort of steam and some of the flavors come together. Some of the cooking, it helps the cooking as well. We found that places where it was pretty dense, where we packed it a little bit too tightly, didn't cook as quickly. So you do want to leave a little bit of space underneath. As much as you see us here trying to sort of fill gaps, you do want some space. There we go. We do have some gaps underneath there, and we're going to make sure that everything's able to cook. A little drizzle of olive oil on top of that. And a good sprinkle of salt. We're using kosher salt here, so just plain kosher salt. And a nice coating of just fresh ground black pepper as well. So now this is pretty much ready for the oven. We're going to get this started with a foil cover. Now what this is going to do is, as I said earlier, it's going to sort of help everything steam in there together. And it's going to make sure that the sweet potatoes get nice and well cooked all the way through before we start adding a few other things to brown on top. So we're just going to pop that into a baking sheet. Always helps to make sure if there's any spills, it's all contained. Also makes it a little easier to get things in and out of the oven. So we are going to pop that on a baking sheet and go into our preheated oven. So it's been in there for a while. We are going to take it out and we're going to test it just to see how close to done we are. So it's probably not finished yet. We hope it's not finished yet. We want to do a couple things with it after uncovering it. So we're just going to give it a little test, finger test, a little fork test as well. It's getting there. It is definitely cooking. It's not ready yet, so it's still got some time. We're going to make sure that everything underneath is not burning, that the garlic isn't scorching or anything at the bottom there. Everything looks to be in order. The garlic is cooking nicely. But what we are going to do at this point is we're going to add about half of that cube butter that we showed you earlier. So right now we're just going to toss in some of that butter. And we're going to use about half of it now. This is going to give it a really nice, rich sort of buttery flavor. And at the end, we're going to use more to get it browned. We're also going to toss in our rum raisins, just to let some of that flavor have a chance to infuse through the whole dish, because we are going to cover this again and let it steam some more. And all of that flavor is going to sort of mix together under that tin foil. So there we go, covered again, and that's going to go back into the oven. And we're going to take it out again, so it's been in there for a little bit longer. And let's open that up. And you can see some of the steam coming out. That looks fantastic. A little fork test tells us that that is very, very close to done. So that's great. It's fork soft at this point. We're just going to test underneath as well. Give a little poke on the sweet potato that's underneath as well. Make sure that it's cooked all the way through. This is just about ready to go. So what we're going to do now is take the foil off, and it is time to get this finished. So we are going to put the rest of the butter on top. We're just going to let that melt and brown on top of the dish. And then we're going to toss on our pecan halves as well. So this is going to go on the top of the sweet potatoes. This is going to go back in the oven, and we're going to continue to bake this uncovered, because we do want that those pecans to get a little bit of toast. We want it to brown a little bit on top, get some nice flavor going in there. If you want, you can broil this. You want to be very, very careful, because it will burn if you're not watching it pretty closely. So we're just going to toss that back in the oven, let it brown for a little while, let everything finish cooking, and then taking it out. That is beautiful. That's just about perfect. So you see some browning on the pecans, you see some browning on the sweet potatoes. This is ready to go. So you can see here how beautiful and soft those sweet potatoes are. We're going to get some of the sweet potato and those nice rum raisins, some of those toasty pecans. The butter has made this beautiful cinnamon butter sauce at the bottom of the casserole dish, and that's it. That's the whole thing. This is no sugar added, no maple syrup or anything. It doesn't need it. It's sweet enough. It is absolutely delicious. As I said, a little bit of a Moroccan flavor. You see Chef Caleb adding a little garnish here because presentation counts. And that's it. That's the whole thing. This is an absolutely delicious sweet potato recipe. If you don't like the super sweet sort of sugary marshmallow sweet potato casserole, this is an amazing alternative. It has a lot of flavor. It is delicious. Highly recommend you give this a shot for Thanksgiving. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.